Hello, my name is Sheila Karuna. Welcome to New Light Streaming Love and Sassy Seer Sheila, as this will be seen on both channels. This is The Myth of Satan, a metaphor for control and a tool of the church by Jason Gray. For centuries, Satan has been depicted as the ultimate embodiment of evil, an entity lurking in the shadows, tempting humanity and ruling over a fiery underworld where the damned suffer for eternity. But what if Satan is nothing more than a metaphor? What if the very concept of the devil, as popularly understood, was a creation of religious institutions to exert control over the masses? Let's explore the origins of Satan, his transformation into a literal figure, and how the Catholic Church weaponized the idea of an external evil to manipulate believers, enforce obedience, and solidify its own power. Satan in the ancient world, a symbol, not a being. Long before the Catholic Church, ancient cultures had concepts of chaos, disorder, and opposition to divine order. But these were not personified as singular malevolent being, as a singular malevolent being. In early Jewish texts, the word Satan, from the Hebrew Satan, meaning the adversary or the accuser, was not a proper name, but a title, often referring to a human or an angel performing a divine role of opposition or testing. In the book of Job, Satan appears not as a rebellious fallen angel, but as a member of God's heavenly court, acting as a kind of prosecutor who challenges Job's faith. There is no indication that this figure is an independent force of evil or a ruler of hell. Instead, he operates under God's authority. Similarly, other ancient cultures had deities associated with destruction or chaos, such as the Egyptian god Set or the Greek Hades. But these were not absolute evildoers. They were part of a balance necessary to the cosmic order. The notion of a cosmic battle between absolute good and absolute evil, with Satan as an enemy of God, was largely foreign to early Jewish theology. So, where did the idea of Satan as the ultimate villain come from? The Catholic Church's invention of the devil. The transformation of Satan from a symbolic adversary to a monstrous supernatural enemy of God was not immediate. It was a slow process, influenced by cultural shifts and most significantly by the rise of institutional Christianity. During the early days of Christianity, the Roman Empire was filled with competing beliefs. The church needed a way to unify its followers and distinguish itself from, quote, pagan religions. One of the most effective methods was to create a clear enemy, an external universal evil that all Christians must resist. The Catholic Church borrowed elements from Persian Zoroastrianism, which featured a dualistic struggle between Ahura Mazda, good, and Angra Mainyu, evil. It also absorbed apocalyptic imagery from texts like the Book of Enoch, which described fallen angels and a rebellion in heaven. Over time, these influences merged into the figure of Satan as a distinct, malevolent being in direct opposition to God. By the time the church established itself as the dominant religious force in the West, it had fully developed the idea of Satan as the ruler of hell, a realm of torment where sinners would be punished for eternity. This was not merely a theological shift. It was a strategic one. Fear as a tool of control. With Satan now a fully realized enemy figure, the church used him to its advantage. Fear of the devil became a primary method of social control. Number 1, enforcing religious obedience. The church presented itself as the only institution capable of protecting people from Satan's influence. Disobeying the church, whether by questioning doctrine, challenging authority, or engaging in non-Christian practices, was framed as aligning with the devil. Heresy was no longer a mere disagreement. It became a crime against God, punishable by excommunication, torture, or execution. Number 2, political power and witch hunts. The church and its allies used the fear of Satan to eliminate threats to their power. The infamous witch hunts of, of the medieval and early modern periods were fueled by the belief that individuals, particularly women, could form pacts with the devil. Countless innocent people were burned, drowned, or hanged, all in the name of stamping out Satan's influence. Number 3, controlling sexuality and free thought. The concept of demonic temptation was often tied to sexuality, particularly female sexuality. Women were accused of being more susceptible to Satan's whispers, leading to restrictions on their roles in society and the suppression of independent female figures such as midwives and herbalists. Similarly, philosophical and scientific inquiry that contradicted church doctrine was seen as the work of the devil. Hell, the ultimate psychological prison. The idea of an eternal hellfire ruled by Satan is arguably the church's most powerful invention. The concept of hell does not appear in early Jewish scriptures in the form that later Christianity adopted. The Hebrew Bible speaks of Sheol, a shadowy, neutral afterlife. It was the Catholic Church that crystallized hell as a terrifying place of endless suffering, making it the ultimate threat for non-compliance. By teaching that sinners, or those who disobeyed the church, would burn in torment forever, the church ensured absolute obedience. This doctrine created a psychological prison where people policed their own thoughts and actions, terrified of stepping out of line. The modern perspective, Satan as a metaphor. Today, many scholars and theologians acknowledge that Satan is more of a metaphor than a literal being. In this view, Satan represents human fears, desires, and struggles rather than an actual demon lurking in the shadows. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, interpreted Satan as an aspect of the human psyche, a projection of the, quote, shadow self, end quote, the parts of ourselves we reject and fear. Similarly, some modern Christian and Gnostic interpretations suggest that Saturn is not an external enemy, but rather a symbol of our own inner conflicts and moral choices. In a world where the idea of a literal devil is losing its grip, we are left with an important question. What happens when people stop fearing an invented enemy? Breaking free from the chains of fear. Understanding Satan as a metaphor rather than a real entity liberates us from centuries of religious manipulation. If there is no external devil to blame for human wrongdoing, then we are fully responsible for our own choices. This shift in perspective challenges us to confront our own moral failings without scapegoating an imaginary enemy. More importantly, it exposes the mechanisms of control that have shaped religious history. The church, like many institutions of power, thrived on fear. The myth of Satan was not just a theological idea, it was a tool. And now that we see the tool for what it is, we can set it down and step into a future free from its grip. Perhaps the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was not convincing the world that he existed, but rather convincing people that they needed the church to save them from him. Wow. I couldn't agree more with that. There is, and I will see if I can find it and put it in the show more section of this video or in an iCard. There's a deleted scene from the movie Dogma that I've always pointed to as a true statement that it is more of a human construct. So if you've never seen that movie, Dogma, I highly recommend it. It's a really good movie. Not one for children, I will say, as it's quite, it can be a bit gory. Some folks feel it's pretty gory because, you know, of the subject matter, but it's also quite funny and interesting to me. There's a lot in there. So I hope you've enjoyed this. And also, how do you feel about it? I'd love to hear your comments in the comment section. If you don't feel comfortable commenting, Please reach out, consciousconversationscentral@gmail.com. Until we meet again, my friends, be well.